Carl Schneider. You're at Schneider Real Estate, and we have about 25 agents in the room here on a Monday morning. So everybody applaud so they can hear that you're here. So we're going to talk about tricks in this market that make your offer bling. It's really a tricky market. So what I did yesterday, I came in on a Sunday. I had 30 offers on a $225,000 rehab house over off of Highway 79 in Gateswood. And I had 165 showings. I think in any event, it was a lot of work. I broke it into 3 sections. These folks don't stand a snowball's chance. These were in the running, and these are the top 5 or 6. I got an offer last night that was all cash, 31,000 over, and that's probably the one we're going to go with. We have a response time today, so we're in a very tricky market. How did we get there? This is just my version of it. Back when everything crashed, again, we had crazy kinds of loans. We had adjustable rate mortgages that people really shouldn't have qualified for. So when they did the adjustment, that was the final noose around their neck. And they had very little money in it. Investors only had 10% into their down payment, whereas now we have to have 20%. Goofy kinds of loans that made no sense. I used to sit there, and back then they used to bring the lender would drop your paper off on Monday morning, and here's our new loan. We're doing 103% financing, nothing down. We'll pay your closing costs for you. Well, how much investment does the buyer have in it? And the qualifications were too low. So nowadays, after that, it was the senators that created new law, and we've been abiding by it now. I'll think of it in a second. Dodd-Frank, thank you. Let's hear it for her. You're paying attention. So 2 senators, Dodd-Frank, put some teeth in it. But we were also bent over trying to increase home ownership, and we did it in such a way that we hurted the American economy. So, there's a balance. We do have the highest in the world home ownership rate, and there's a lot of good things to say about that. So anyway, what happened was when things crashed, our good friends, Tom Hughes, I went to seminars where he had 1,200 lots in Illinois under construction, where development, he had 2,000 here in this area. And then when the music quit, a lot of them had to go out of business. Tommy Johnson said, I'm not going back in it anymore. I've been doing it for 27 years. I'm done. Adios, amigos. So we knew that it would take a long time for banks to start talking to investors to develop. We knew it would take a long time to develop and take a long time to build. So we're underbuilding. It's supply and demand. What's the market going to do when it settles down? I think it's going to be a softer landing, but I'm not an economist. Oh, we'll play this video first.
Welcome back. The housing market is booming across the country, and the St. Louis market is no different. Limited inventory combined with historic low interest rates is creating an all-out bidding war for homes. News 4's Caroline Hecker is watching out for both buyers and sellers. Here's what you need to know in 2021.
You'll be hard-pressed to find many for sale signs across the St. Louis area, as a dwindling number of homes are up for grabs. The pandemic not serving as a deterrent for home buyers armed with low interest rates.
Something that we never imagined that would happen when COVID started. We all thought that the market would just completely die down, but it's better than we've seen it in years.
Low interest rates allow buyers to get more for their money, with many sellers receiving dozens of contracts after just hours on the market. Most of those offers above asking price, to the tune of $20,000, $30,000, even $40,000 over.
Now it's just highest and best, and that's what you get. There's no really back and forth with these contracts.
Say you get a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage for $200,000 with a 4% interest rate. Your monthly payment is about $955. Compare that same loan with a 3% interest rate, and you're saving about $100 a month and more than $40,000 in interest over the life of the loan. Realtors say one of the most disturbing trends of this entire housing boom is some buyers' willingness to forego the inspection process in order to appease the seller. It's something they do not recommend, but they say sometimes it has meant the difference between getting the home and missing out. First-time homebuyer Melissa Walsh recently bought a home in St. Charles and says the process was disappointing at times.
We definitely had to go above what they were asking for on all of our offers, and some of them we were surprised still that we didn't get them because they're like, wow, that was a really good offer.
Realtors do not anticipate interest rates increasing much throughout 2021, but do expect inventory to increase as the warmer months approach. In St. Louis County, Caroline Hecker, News 4.
So everybody knows you can call Quicken Loans and you can get a pre-approval quickly. over the phone and you're out shopping. In this marketplace, if you're a listing agent, sometimes if you get one of the quickies that's not here in town, they don't trust it. And so they kind of toss that in the bottom of the pile of the offers, right? Because they just want the person to feel good, where everybody's in a hurry. We're doing things fast. So we'll just give you a pre-approval. We'll deal with it later after you're under contract. And a lot of the listing agents are like, I don't think I want to treat that equal to someone local who maybe Melinda Movic but issued, or James Cundiff, or someone that we use every day. They might count that more seriously. But I would take it a step further and say some lenders, check with your lender. Some lenders are willing to do what I call pre-underwritten. So that's the next step. So when you think of it right now, when you have a quickie pre-approval, you wait till you get a contract accepted, and then you bring your package, and then they start saying we need verification of employment, verification of rent, verification of your 2 months bank statements, savings, checking, all that stuff. Well, you could do that ahead of time, because if you don't do it ahead of time, once they get something, you know how an underwriter is, they kind of scratch and sniff and they go, well, we want to now see something else, the divorce decree. We want proof that, they didn't get this money from so-and-so. So there's all these verifications. You can go through a pre-underwritten process with some lenders. Now, I use Bank of America. I'm not advertising for them, but there's a lot of things that might challenge me with Bank of America because they're big gorilla, but their pre-underwritten has helped me a lot when I'm presenting an offer. And of these that I had last night, one of them said that. Keep in mind, when I'm pre-underwritten, that means you're not going to get a surprise 10 or 15 days from now when you've been off the market. All right, second thing is we talk about price. Some people start at the asking price. Some people start a little higher. Almost never see anything that sells for asking price. We're losing track on how to price things. And I admit myself, I'm losing track. I can give you a lot of examples. We talk about the one where I was going to buy a house from Jamie, my niece. I own some other ones in that subdivision. So I said, hey, $200,000 for a 1,035 square foot ranch sounds reasonable. And as she came back, she said, Uncle Merle, we're seeing some other ones popping up here. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll do an appraisal, because if I buy it, I'm going to need an appraisal anyway. So First State Bank, New Frontier Bank sent out their appraiser, says, we all guess, because Jamie's dad is a realtor, Keith Schneider, upstairs doing commercial. So we all guessed. We were all low. It came in at 225. I said, well, I'm out of the game. We put it on the market. I don't know. Let's mark it up. 238. I get offer at 235 and two for 238. And guess what? The appraisal came in at 240. So why don't the appraiser that did the 240 go talk to the guy that did it at 225? I don't know. But anyway, that's the market we're in. It's wild, wild west. I don't know what it'll be like this spring. Some people say there will be more inventory, might be more buyers, and then it's still a disproportionate market. In all my years, we got Schneider Real Estate Smart Move since 1975. I'm 69 years old, and all my life, I've never seen a market like this. I don't know where it's going. We're in it for the ride, and let's always adjust like we've done every other market. When we talk about the escalation clause, what that means to us is that we'll say something like we are offering 250, which is the asking price, or 255, and we will automatically offer 1,000 more than the next highest net offer. I had one individual when I was on the listing side, and Joanne Price wrote me an offer, and we'll just use an example. Say it's 250. But she's asking for 5,000 closing costs. So the net is how much? 245. The other guy sends me an offer, says I'll do 250, and he says I'll do escalation clause, but he didn't use the word net. So he's at 251. He's really 6,000 over the net on that other offer I had from Joanne Price. I didn't tell him, and he doesn't know, and he didn't tell his buyer, but they paid 6,000 more because that 3-letter word. So words matter. Now, this is a law case, but we call Hulse versus Krieger. That's in the real estate world where we say we can't play attorneys, but we're all doing that a little bit on paragraph 21 where we editorialize. And I'm going to say this like 10 times during this presentation. We have the expert background of Court Schneider, Terry Gander. I know a little something. When you start writing these offers, send a copy over to one of us and say, hey, I'm going a little bit outside the coloring lines. What do you think? What am I missing? Like I said, that's why I write in there, did I hear net? Yeah, Terry.
Our escalation clause verbiage is in Sky Slope for every one of them to never have to write their own or blow the 3-letter.
I had one guy, one agent, where I was telling him how to write it over the phone. So I don't know. But we get great training here at Schneider Real Estate, and we codify or write those clauses out and make them available so you can copy and paste it and put the maximum in there. But yes, that's smart business. The other thing we can talk about is earnest money. How many people here believe it is a requirement that you have earnest money on a sales contract? It's not a requirement. So in contract law, you have offer, acceptance, and consideration. The consideration is I will get a loan and I will pay you $250,000. There is no law that says you need earnest money. So I wrote one with Scott not too long ago, and I think I did it with no earnest money where I was buying it myself. So I do that sometimes when I'm buying off the grid, another house that's not in the MLS or whatever. So earnest money, only time earnest money comes into play is if you default. You have a bad hair day, which I don't have anymore, but you just don't show up for closing. So think about it. The contract, as compared to many years ago, is much, much more buyer oriented. There's much more escape hatches. So when you look at paragraph 10, which is the inspection clause, one of them says option 2 is I'm adios amigos, I'm out of here. We didn't used to have that in there. So we call that the 10-day free look. You can write on anything and get out by spending $400 for an inspection. So that's the free 10-day free look, or you can shorten that to 5 days. It's a 5-day free look. So in any event, earnest money is when every one of those, the survey has been satisfied, the appraisal has been satisfied, the inspections have all been negotiated, and everything's done, and we decide not to show up. The seller has the right to sue you for specific performance, but that's messy. In all my years, I haven't seen it. I know my brother Roger here as an agent saw it once with a doctor that was sued for not performing. It's just so much easier to keep the earnest money. So that's if you read that paragraph, it says in lieu of a lawsuit, seller will accept the earnest money and go on their way. But just think about it. If in my world, like 99.9% of them close, I can't even tell you of the 1,500 transactions I've done over 1 million years, anyone that didn't show. So the risk factor is pretty low. So what if you put 1,000 earnest money? What if you put 5,000? Wouldn't it look good? You know, we're going to take some risks as a buyer in this market if we're going to stand out and have some bling. So I would encourage you to talk about higher amounts of earnest money. It's not that one thing, it's that thing, plus the appraisal thing, plus how you said the inspection thing that gave you the bling. Hey, I'm a poet and don't know it. All right, now waiving the appraisal writer, I'm doing that right now. When we look at this top stack, what I sent back, and it's not so much the money. I was talking to John Otto this morning, and I told him I have an offer is 31,000 over, and I have some other ones that are 40,000 over. And he said, well, why are you focusing on the 31? And I said, because once I worked with my seller and I said, okay, we were asking 225, pick a number. I said, I'm picking 240. I say it can appraise up to 240, and beyond that, I don't think it's going to happen. Like maybe there is somebody, but I don't know which one I pick is going to get which appraiser. So I gave you the example earlier. One appraiser said 225 and one said 240, higher than the accepted price. I don't get it. If you are an offer over 240 and you say I'll pay up to 5,000 over appraisal out of my pocket as a buyer, because once you get to the appraisal amount, your lenders, let's say it appraises at 241. To them, it's a 241 transaction. If you're willing to pay 5,000 more than that, you come out of your bank account and it does not count toward down payment or anything. They're just saying, you guys are doing that on the side and we allow it. That's all they're saying. But again, the appraisal writer in this situation, late last night, I got a cash offer and like I said, it's 256. It is cash. They did put the appraisal writer in there, but they said they would pay up to 5,000 over. So looking at everything, I think they're going to be the winner. And anyway, just think about different things you can do with the appraisal. I've done already where I waive the appraisal. That's bodacious in this market. That's a bodacious move. But you could say, I'll go up to 10,000 over appraisal. That's bodacious. That's pretty, but make sure they have the funds. The other thing I have here is maybe as an amendment, I would prefer to do that separate and not necessarily submit that to the lender, tee off the appraiser. I would rather them just do an independent and let's see what they come up with. Waive the inspection, number 5, paragraph 10. Paragraph 10 is a big paragraph and it's got first section of the guts of it says you have generally 10 days, but you can make that 5 days. And that's more attractive because if for some reason we don't have a meeting of the minds, I'm a seller, I can get back on the market quicker. So that's one of those bling things. So anyway, it says that you can scratch and sniff and do your due diligence for a 5-day period or 10-day period or whatever you select. And that means radon. It means, any type of inspection that you want to do. And the minute that you turn over to the listing agent your inspection and your inspection notice, that list of things that you would like repaired, the scratch and sniff due diligence period is over. We're now starting a new period. You could even make that period, the default is 10 days. You could say in there, and again, you got to watch your verbiage because you can create confusion, but you could say as to the first 2,500, that means it could be a water heater, which is 1,500. It could be everything. As to the first 5,000 of inspection items per bid, buyer will assume responsibility. Thereafter, subparagraph 3, where we do the negotiating of what the seller is going to pay for and not, only those things above the first 5,000 will fall in that category. That makes a seller feel good. So let's say you're writing an offer sight unseen. You have some checkpoints there. You can, leave that in there. You can say on those subparagraphs after you do the inspections, it says I can accept it. Subparagraph 1, I can just accept it with its defects. Paragraph 2 says I can bolt, I can exit, get my earnest money back. And paragraph 3 says we're going to go to the mat and negotiate. So I've seen them where some people drew lines through different ones of those, but you always got to think of what does that mean? I'm going to say it again. Send it to court, send it to Terry or to myself, and then we'll talk about that. Maybe even get on a conference call with your client. But there's a lot of things you can do. I had one that we did the regular inspection. It was a rehab over in Afton, $200,000, $206,000. Seller was not willing to do many things. I think they made a mess in the furnace because all the construction should have been filtered through the furnace. We wanted all the ductwork cleaned and this and that. But we ended up settling for some repairs and asked the seller to provide a home protection plan. Home protection plan has already made a claim because I saw I usually get notified a $550 appliance claim. So a home protection plan may be some way that you negotiate some remedies in terms of the inspection. But again, you can waive the whole paragraph 10 and say, I'm just taking it as is. So there's a lot of different ways we can do that. Number 6 here, I has buyer agrees to extend the closing for seller to find suitable housing. So let's say seller, you ask the agent. So I do like to call the listing agent. And in this market, like yesterday, I would guess I had 30 calls from agents, 30 texts and 30 emails, but I had close to, it was exhausting. So think about that. The listing agent is probably getting bombarded, but sometimes I'll call them. And on the one down in Afton, she said it was a fix and flip. When you do a fix and flip, you should file initially an intent to sell. The intent to sell notifies contractors, the electrician, the roofer. You don't have forever to file your lien because I'm going to sell this puppy in a short period of time within a 6-month period. Some people don't file those. So I usually, like in that case, he didn't file it, the guy that did the work. So the agent said, would you close at Hillsborough Title? I said, absolutely. I normally close at a different title company, but I accommodated. So that was things that were important. That particular title company is more amenable to just looking at his paid receipts and lien waivers and hoping that, they got it and cover it all. So again, buyer agrees. So you say in there that we will do some extensions. We're open to doing extensions because I'm living in a rental house. I'm living at mom and dad's house or whatever. And I want to make it nice for you. Not because I'm nice, I want it to be bling to the offer and say, we are agreeable to do up to 3 30-day extensions. You can spell it out or whatever. And we'll get a 10 days in advance notice that you're going to elect the next 30-day extension. There's a lot of ways we can do that. Then I have buyer agrees to rent back for X number of days after closing. So I had a listing on Sharwood. Abby runs a daycare downstairs. So Jason says, I got to find something where if I have to make it ready, I'd be able to have Abby in business at my house, her house on Friday. And then over the weekend, we move and she's back in business Monday morning. Long story short, I had the buyer, got the buyer referral from Bank of America, did a one-party listing, went and showed it to my buyer. Actually, the initials of the husband-wife and husband-wife were identical. So whatever's on the door, they don't have to change the initials. They fell in love with it. We wrote it full price, $200,000. It was all dialed up, granite and everything. Kitchen was to die for. Buyer said, we'll give you up to 6 months to build or do whatever. So it may end up where they only need 3 months. So, but we've already prepaid. We closed it last week. Seller prepaid for 6 months worth of rent back. Buyer's agreeable to prorate it. Just whenever you tell us, we can move in. That worked out great. Waive financing contingency, paragraph 4. You have financing, but you decide to waive it. That's a little tricky when I'm on the listing agent side, and I have one in this stack here. But I did take notes. I took summaries. So I got little stickies on each one that says, you know, what's good and bad and what's to look out. So we might waive financing, which really basically leans heavily on how much earnest money do you have. If you only have $1,000 of earnest money, and you're saying I'm waiving that contingency, you may not necessarily have cash. You may still be getting a loan. You're just saying if I don't get the loan, I could forfeit my earnest money. But if you only got $1,000, that doesn't mean anything to me as a listing agent. You don't have any bling. But if you say I got $10,000 earnest money, that's how sure I am I'm gonna get a loan. You know, like I've done loans with New Frontier Bank. I have one sitting here in my file for $250,000. They've never said no to me. They tell me when they're going to start saying no when I'm at their limit. So I will write an offer without a financing contingency on my financing, yes. But I will write it without that, but I'm going to put a substantial earnest money because that's how sure I am that they're not going to let me sit there high and dry. Then I do have buyer to waive review of indentures. We habitually put some of that stuff in there. That's a minus bling if you have some of those little things in there. So I'm just saying there's other exits. Do you really want to put that in a normal market? We're putting that in there and it's no big deal. But in this market, when you're dealing with this stack of 30 offers, everything matters, right? So that's pretty much what I have to say. I'm open to any questions or discussion that we might want to have. Yes, sir, Mr.
Thank
Smith.
you. First and
Yes.
foremost, great job. So it's just saying you're not actually waiving the appraisal. You're waiving if it only appraises at 250, you're offering 275. You're willing to pay the additional
Right.
in cash over, right?
Right.
I just want to make
So
sure.
you're waiving the typical restrictions of the appraisal or the outcome.
And then
So,
the way to exit.
right. So if you have
out
an
of it.
appraisal writer, you are subject, the seller is subject to, I only am under contract to the extent that it appraises for our contract price. That's what the appraisal writer says.
Right.
And if it goes over, me as the buyer have no liability. I can get my earnest money back. It's one of those exits. But if you take the appraisal writer off, yes, the lender wants to appraise it. They will operate. If it appraises at 251, it was a 270 sale price. The lender will operate with 251. But if you took the appraisal writer off, you're saying I'll pay the difference in cash. I have no more, I don't have a contingency if it doesn't appraise out. That's what it's saying.
Right. Do you typically, when you do that, do you say, hey, something along, I caught you say, we're willing to go 5,000 over?
That's the best way to do it.
So you're not getting.
It's not a blank check.
Right.
So if you say I would go up to 10,000 thinking it might be 5,000, in a wild case, it might appraise so low I have to come up with 10.
Right.
But you can think through it that. But yeah, I would probably put a number on that.
Right.
Dana, and talk loud and then we'll be able to record that. Thanks.
Sure. You had mentioned something about with regards to the appraisal, an amendment of sorts so that the appraiser for the bank doesn't necessarily see the price.
Mhm.
Can you speak more to that? I was a little confused. Sort of clarify that.
Sometimes I live on the edge and sometimes court cringes. Well, you're already cringing. Well, I can believe that. What I would do is I would write the contract offer and then I would write a separate amendment saying that we are willing to go up to 10,000 cash above the appraisal amount. I would then submit the basic contract to my lender.
Hey, Merle, this is Melinda.
Somebody, hey, hold that thought for a second. We have somebody barging in here online.
Yeah.
Oh, Melinda, yes.
Yes, Merle, I just want to let you know that we do pre-underwrites as well.
Okay, I thought you said no because it was too busy a market.
No, I never ever said that.
Right. That was that other good looking lender. Well, that really, it's valuable. Most of the buyers that you have are serious. They're putting up with a lot of pushback. So I know we're in a busy market, and I know we don't want to waste the loan officer Melinda's time or James's time or the guy at Guild or the gal at Guild. But I don't think anybody's wasting anybody's time. I don't think there's anybody out there subjecting themselves to this challenge, not serious. So it does make sense, as best you can, get a quickie pre-approval. You can go out and start kicking some tires. You can actually write an offer, but why not through the underwriting process? Anything that you can streamline the process. Who else has a question? Yeah.
I do. I'm just wondering if instead that they're going to pay cash, but then later on into the process, change their financing to get the house financed.
That's perfectly okay. It's legal. The thing is the one right now, that's my number one, says they're cash. What do you need to see as a listing agent? Proof of funds. So if you got proof of funds and they decide to go ahead and apply for a loan, it's a free country. That's perfectly okay. Once you see the proof of funds and they didn't check the box on paragraph 4, it's contingent. If they, I would do something like that as an investor. There's nothing wrong with that. It's very much above ground that I'm saying I have the funds, pay cash. If for some reason New Frontier slips the rug out from under me, I'll pay cash and I'll go over to First State Bank and get my loan after I close.
The $5,000 and $10,000 we're talking about going over the appraisal value. I just got a contract last night where there was 20 contracts that we wanted. And the point that the agent made was the fact that we wrote that the buyer was willing to pay $5,000 in form of cash above appraisal value.
But here's what we don't know. We don't usually ask, prove to me you have down payment, closing costs on a normal loan, plus the $7,000 for the over. But again, they're risking their earnest money if they're messing around with you like that. So that's why if you're on the listing side, bump up the earnest money. If you're on the buyer side, bump up the earnest money. But again, when you guys write it, send it over to one of us and let's troubleshoot before you get in trouble. So I'm going to summarize and then we can answer some more questions. Just for the recording, I'm going to summarize. So you see the big rock. There's the parable or the story that a king purposely placed a huge rock in the middle of the road. And then he went and hid and he observed what people did. And many of the people came up to that big obstacle, that big rock, and they just turned around. They went back. A lot of people turned around and went back. They didn't want to face it. Some people risk and they went around the rock but risked falling down the mountainside. There was a pheasant who was carrying all the vegetables and fruit to the market, came upon the rock, and he was very motivated. He managed a way to pry the rock out of the road, and under the rock was a huge purse of gold and silver, so he became rich. And I'm just saying, in summary, we're running against this rock in this market. I suggest you remove that obstacle, figure out what it takes to remove that obstacle, and I think you'll have great reward.